Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The country's external debt service hits $148.87 billion from January to June, already higher than the total for all of 2024. Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon issues new budget guidelines for DPWH projects. And U.S. President Donald Trump says Israel is backing Washington's peace proposal for Gaza. First, let's take a look at how global financial markets performed overnight. Wall Street closed higher on a tech rally as investors brushed off fears of a U.S. government shutdown and hawkish Fed comments. Optimism over artificial intelligence and expectations of more rate cuts give the S&P 500 its biggest boost. A major focus this week is the funding standoff between Republicans and Democrats, raising the possibility of a government shutdown starting Wednesday, the first day of fiscal 2026.
This quarter has been great, and the winners have been tech and tech-related companies. So you're pretty much seeing those stocks perform very well. Now, normally after the quarter ends, you may see another rebalancing by the portfolio managers. And as we enter the month of October, since we didn't get the seasonal weakness in September, there is some risk that we get some seasonal weakness in October, especially that we're facing a potential government shutdown.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average higher by 0.2%, S&P 500 higher by 0.3%, and the Nasdaq higher by 0.5%. Over in Europe, markets also finished higher. The UK's FTSE 100 higher by 0.2%. Germany's DAX flat with an upward bias, and France's CAC 40 up by 0.1%. Now, the Philippines is paying more to foreign creditors than ever before. External debt service hit $148.87 billion from January to June, already higher than the total for all of 2024. According to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the government accounted for $94.8 billion of that, up nearly 19% from last year. Private debt payments also climbed to $54.07 billion, a 7.38% increase. Economists warn that the surge is a wake-up call, reminding policymakers of the risks of piling on more foreign loans. Government borrowings also spiked in August, driven by retail treasury bonds, pushing gross borrowings to over 508 billion pesos in that month alone. Now, we just slipped in the Global Economic Freedom Rankings. The Philippines fell one spot to 62nd out of the 165 economies in the Fraser Institute's 2023 report. It's our lowest rank in 2 years, even if our score inched up to 7.05 out of 10 in 2023 from 7.01 in 2022. The index looks at how freely people can make economic choices across 5 areas. We scored the highest in sound money, ranking 34th, and also improved in government size and regulation. But we still scored poorly in legal system and property rights, coming in at 109th. Our rank in freedom to trade internationally stood at 86. A 2% VAT cut may sound good at the cash register, but it comes with a heavy price tag. Lowering the value-added tax rate to 10% triggers a chain of economic and fiscal consequences. At the Philippine Tax Academy Convention, Finance Undersecretary Carlo Fermin Adriano said that cutting the VAT rate from 12 to 10% will reduce government revenues by about 330 billion pesos annually. That's equivalent to around 1% of the country's GDP. He warns that this will widen the fiscal deficit from the 2025 target of 5.5% to about 6.5%, reversing efforts toward fiscal consolidation. Adriano also cautioned that the country's credit rating could be downgraded, pushing up borrowing costs and increasing debt servicing. If the government is determined to lower the VAT rate, Adriano says that the only option is by reducing spending by around 300 billion pesos a year, meaning fewer government programs. Free trade deal doesn't mean a free pass. The Trade Department unveils the list of strict non-tariff measures Philippine agriculture exporters must meet to enter the European Union market. Even with a future EU-Philippines free trade deal, requirements like health certification, pest inspections, labeling rules, and traceability systems remain in place. The DTI says the FTA could still help by reducing costs and by speeding up market access. However, Philippine exporters have raised concerns that these stringent rules could limit their ability to fully benefit from the agreement. In 2024, the top 10 Philippine food exports to the EU amounted to $1.45 billion. Rice may be off the table for imports, but customs revenues barely feel it. The extension of the temporary import ban on rice has only a minimal impact on government tariff collections. At a convention organized by the Philippine Tax Academy, Customs Assistant Commissioner Vincent Philip Maronilla says the revenue loss from the ban is very minimal. Maronilla adds that the Bureau of Customs will intensify efforts to find other sources of revenue to offset any shortfall from the restriction. The curtains are closing on padded bids at Public Works. Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon issues stricter budget rules for DPWH consulting projects effective immediately. Under Department Order number 184, any bid that exceeds the approved budget for the contract, or ABC, is automatically disqualified. For foreign-assisted projects, cost increases beyond the approved loan or grant now require oversight clearance. The guidelines also mandate market scoping, yearly costing updates, and validation by the Bureau of Design. These new rules replace a 2018 policy and come as Dizon continues to tighten procurement across the agency. Digital cash-in transactions are about to get faster, but they could also make things more expensive. Ayala-led Bank of the Philippine Islands, or BPI, and GCash start adopting InstaPay for cash-in transactions tomorrow. In separate statements, BPI and GCash say the move is in line with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' directive for all online banks and e-wallets to use InstaPay, ensuring faster, safer, and more transparent fund transfers nationwide. BPI announces it will implement a standard 15 peso service fee for cash-in transactions via InstaPay, including those to GCash. GCash, however, says it will not charge direct cash-in fees under the new system, though partner banks may adjust their own service fees depending on their own policies. On another front, Eastern Samar defies expectations, posting the fastest economic growth in the country for 2024. Data from the latest provincial product accounts released by the Philippine Statistics Authority shows the province growing 10.2%. Eastern Samar outpaces all 82 provinces and 33 highly urbanized cities nationwide, well above the national average of 5.7%. The PSA notes that 7 of the top 10 fastest-growing local economies in 2024 are provinces, while 3 are highly urbanized cities, highlighting the rising contribution of regional economies to national growth. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is in the red, lower by 0.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index up by 0.4%. Shanghai's Composite up by 0.3%. And Singapore's Straits Times Index higher by 0.2%. Here at home, political scandals and a weaker peso keep investors on edge, dragging the market back to the 5,900 level. The PSE Index dropped nearly 0.5% yesterday to 59.97. Analysts say uncertainty over the flood control investigations and currency weakness continue to weigh on investor sentiment. But there are signs of a possible technical bounce, with U.S. core PCE inflation holding at 2.9% in line with expectations, raising hopes for more rate cuts by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Now, that could ease pressure on the peso and give the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas more room to cut interest rates. Now, for the near-term, support is seen at 59.50 with resistance between 6,150 and 6,200. Overall, analysts expect caution to prevail, with traders tracking both global cues and domestic developments for market direction. Checking on the main gauge this morning, as of 10:17, we're seeing weakness in the index. It's down by 0.1%, back to the 5,900 level at 59.90 rather, rounding that up. All shares index is in the green, flat with an upward bias at 36.38. Taking a look at these sub-indices, we're seeing weakness in the financials, industrial, holding firms, and property counters, whereas the services and mining and oil counters are in the green, with the mining and oil counter limiting the market's decline up by 2.42% in early trade. Total volume is at 156 million shares, valued at 825 million pesos. Now, market breadth is positive. We've got 64 advancers, 53 decliners, and 52 stocks unchanged. This just goes to show that while the index looks weak, the broader market has not collapsed. There are some gains being made right now. So in the currencies market, the peso opened at 58.05 against the greenback, up from its previous close of 58.15. U.S. President Donald Trump announces that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is backing a U.S.-led peace plan to end the war in Gaza. The White House releases Trump's 20-point proposal, calling for a ceasefire, including a swap of hostages held by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners in Israel. Speaking at a joint press conference with Netanyahu, Trump says he hopes Hamas will also accept the plan.
And it means the immediate end to the war itself, not just Gaza. It's the war itself. Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing.
Riyad Mansour, the permanent observer of Palestine to the United Nations, calls for an end to the Gaza conflict. Speaking at the UN Security Council on Monday, he accuses Israel of setting the stage to expand the war into the West Bank. He warns that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under pressure from far-right politicians to annex the territory.
So the challenge for us, should we give peace a chance and to start the healing of all of these wounds and to give a political hope and horizon for the Palestinian people and the Israeli people and all the peoples in the Middle East? Or should we continue in this perpetual war forever? We have chosen peace. You have chosen peace. There is a party that is beating the drums to move it in the direction of the West Bank, and we should succeed in not allowing them to do so.
Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, responds that the Palestinian Authority should focus on eradicating terrorism.
You should confront the radicals take responsibility. We have no desire to be in Gaza. I have said it many times. We have no desire to go into Jenin and fight Hamas in the camps in Jenin. But it's your responsibility. Every nation, when you have terror activity, you deal with it, you confront it. But if you are not capable of doing it, then the responsibility will be on our shoulders.
France and several Western allies formally recognized the State of Palestine, a historic shift in global diplomacy, even as Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects ceasefire calls at the United Nations General Assembly. On the ground in Gaza, more than 40 people are killed in new strikes, with civilians now facing famine-level conditions. Joining us is Mansour Anastas, the ambassador of the State of Palestine, to help us understand both the humanitarian crisis and its global implications. Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ambassador Munir. Thank you for being here with us. Ambassador, before we turn to diplomacy and economics, can you give us a brief of what's going on the ground in Gaza right now?
Well, unfortunately, on the ground up till now, the situation is as bad as the 2 years, the past 2 years, which means famine is there, destruction is ongoing, bombardment and fire is going on as well. Humanitarian aid is forbidden. There are no medicines. Hospitals ran out of medicines, all kind of medical drugs and oxygen and anesthetic products and so on. So the situation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is so bad. In addition, the famine and the starvation is still there. The population is dying not only because of the bombardment and the Israeli attacks, but also because of the famine. Unfortunately, the situation is not enhancing, is not better than the days before. Just yesterday, 40 or 45 people were killed. Each day there is 40, 50, 100 people killed either by the Israeli bombardment and attacks or by famine and the absence of food in this trip.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that. But on the diplomatic side, there is international pressure against Israel. Almost 160 countries, including France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Portugal, now recognize Palestine. How significant is this morally and legally?
Well, morally, it's very important for our population in the West Bank and in Gaza, principally. Now, legally, it is very important because this step is a contribution in isolating politically and diplomatically Israel on the international scene. This is the first thing. Then it is an expression of a strong support for the two-state solution. It is also an expression of a strong support against the annexation of the West Bank that was intended by Israel. Unfortunately, now even President Trump said that he wouldn't allow such annexation. So this recognition is very important for us, and it is the first step toward the two-state solution and having the state of Palestine living side by side in peace and security next to Israel, the occupying power for the moment.
That's the end goal, lasting peace. Interestingly, the Philippines recognized Palestine in 1989, 36 years ago. Why has it taken so long for the other countries, France, the superpowers, the UK, Canada, Portugal, Australia, to recognize Palestine?
Well, in that case, we should go back to the history. The State of Palestine was proclaimed in 15 November in Algeria, 15 November 1988. Remember, at that time, it was still the end of the Cold War, which means the world was divided into two blocks, Eastern and Western Bloc. And at that time, right after the proclamation of the State of Palestine, almost 100 countries immediately recognized Palestine in 88 and 89, including the Philippines. But again, at that time, there was this division in the world, and all these countries that recognize Palestine, the 12 countries that you mentioned who recognized Palestine a few days ago, or last week exactly, they were more in the Western Bloc, and Palestine and the supporters of Palestine were almost all of them in the Eastern Bloc. Part of them were in between, just like Philippines. At that time, it was not completely Eastern, not completely Western, and some other countries as well. But all these countries, Canada, Australia, UK, France, etc., they were considered being part of the Western Bloc. And then everything changed starting from 1990 and 91, right after the collapse of the USSR and the end of the Cold War. And then there were many countries, European countries, who started to change their approach and their relation with the PLO at that time, the legal and lonely representative of the Palestinian people. And then we went to the negotiations with Israel and we reached the Oslo agreements. But unfortunately, of course, as usual, Israel did not comply with these agreements. It is due principally to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister at that time, who was, let's say, the leader of these agreements and who was willing really to implement them. But right after him, no Israeli leader was willing to implement these agreements, and that's why we reached this situation that is a horrible situation for our population.
Diplomatically, with more countries now recognizing Palestine, how much closer does this bring you to peace and stability?
Well, the problem is not the number. We are, as you mentioned, about 160 countries recognizing the statehood of Palestine. Among them, there are 4 permanent members of the Security Council. But there is only one member in the Security Council on who everything depends.
Yes.
Remember, this member we're talking about, it's the U.S. During the last 2 years, they used the veto against resolutions for the ceasefire 6 times. Yeah? Resolutions asking for the ceasefire and the release of hostages, but they vetoed all these resolutions. So the position of the U.S. is very important, and this will allow us to have our state realized completely. Our state currently exists, but it is under occupation. And part of it is completely destroyed, which is the Gaza Strip. There's another question, probably we'll talk about it, the economical interest of Israel and the U.S. at the moment. They expressed that, there is a gas in the Sea of Gaza, and it is an important wealth. And at the moment, President Trump was intending to push out the whole population, displace the whole population of Gaza, and to take over Gaza and to create a Riviera. But fortunately, he changed completely his position with his new plan with 20 points.
Speaking of the new plan, U.S. President Trump says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is backing a U.S.-led peace plan to end the war in Gaza, which includes a hostage swap. What are your thoughts on this, Ambassador?
Well, our authority, our government welcomed the efforts by President Trump to reach peace and stability, because part of it is very important for us. First of all, it is the immediate ceasefire. This is the most important thing. Second thing, it is the humanitarian aid that will be allowed to arrive under the UN supervising and authority. These are the most urgent things that we are looking for. Then third positive thing he mentioned, as I said before, he said he wouldn't allow the annexation of the West Bank, and this is very important for us, and otherwise it will forbid the existence of the Palestinian state. So these are very important and positive things included in the Trump plan. There are some other things that needs to be a little bit more clarified and considered. For example, there is a provision for the withdrawal, but progressive withdrawal of the Israeli army, but there is no clear timeline for this. So there are many things that needs to be clarified.
Speaking of the many things that need to be clarified, Ambassador, a large impetus, the impetus for the conflict has been Hamas. What role does Hamas have in Palestine now? And how do you break away from that? Because that was really the crux.
Well, there is an international request to exclude Hamas from the political Palestinian scene. And our leadership said that they are willing to do so and to implement reforms and to conduct within 1 year after the ceasefire elections, presidential and parliamentary, which means legislative elections. So Hamas is not anymore the problem. Currently, the problem is the ceasefire and how we deal of implementing the proposal that is a little bit close to the Arab plan. It talks about a theocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee for running the governance of the civil society, but under the supervision and oversight of an international body that the Trump plan called Board of Peace. This board will be shared, following what is mentioned in the plan, by President Trump himself, and Tony Blair might be member of it. But all these things,
taking shape.
Yeah, but all these things needs to be more clarified and discussed. And in theory, this is only a transitional period before handing over the governance to the Palestinian Authority.
Oh, okay. France has proposed a United Nations stabilization force in Gaza. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is something that we were asking. Our leadership has been asking for such an international force since a long time.
Yeah, a peacekeeping force.
Yeah, a peacekeeping force. If it was there wouldn't have been all these massacres and this genocide that is going on.
With international presence, it would be a deterrent to enact more violence.
This is the purpose of such a force, is to avoid any belligerent intentions. But unfortunately, it comes a little bit late. Now, it is better late than never. But meanwhile, we witnessed a genocide, a huge genocide in the 21st century. This is unbelievable. And I think history will judge all those who were silent during this genocide.
Palestinian officials, how are they participating in this? How are they voicing their support for these international, proposals?
Well, our leadership expressed their satisfaction, and they welcomed the efforts of President Trump to end the war in Gaza, and they expressed their willingness to cooperate with the U.S. President in order to go forward in the not only the ceasefire, but also the day after with the reconstruction of Gaza. With this transitional period, our leadership accepted a transitional period with a view to handing over the governance to the Palestinian Authority later on.
And as Gaza faces famine-level conditions right now, what's the bare minimum needed in order for aid to be able to come through?
Well, we've been asking for this since a few months ago. The most important thing is to give authority to the UN bodies who are in charge of the humanitarian aid and who has the experience of delivering this humanitarian aid. So now in the Trump plan, it seems that this will be provided immediately right after the ceasefire. And this will allow stopping this starvation in Gaza.
Yeah, that's what's important now, the ceasefire, so aid can come through. Beyond the war, who should govern post-war Gaza? logically the government, but how's that looking?
Well, following the proposal of President Trump, there will be, as I mentioned, a Palestinian apolitical, a technocratical committee who will be in charge of the governance of the civil society and the management of the daily issues, but under the supervision of an international body, which is the Board of Peace that I mentioned, with President Trump at the head of this body and membership of many others, including Tony Blair. But as I mentioned, this needs to be discussed with our leadership. And it is mentioned that afterwards it will be a transitional period waiting for the reform of the Palestinian Authority to be implemented, and then it will be handed over to the Palestinian Authority.
Yeah.
But here also it needs a kind of clarification, because there is no clear timeline and what is meant by completing the implementation of the reform. Is it only the elections? Is it other things? So
There's so much to take into consideration for post-war Gaza, especially when you think about the economy of Gaza that has been completely decimated.
Absolutely.
Tourism, nil. I mean, you are from Bethlehem.
Yes.
90% of that was just born out of tourism, of people wanting to visit the city of Bethlehem. It's been decimated. How do you build your economy from the ground up after such a travesty?
Well, this is a huge challenge, and this will be the purpose of this Palestinian committee under the supervision of this international body. First, for Gaza, as you mentioned, economy is completely decimated. There is no economy, no jobs, no growth, no investment, nothing at all in Gaza. So the first thing is the reconstruction, and we are talking not only reconstruction of housing, but first the infrastructure that has been completely destroyed. We are talking about the infrastructure for water, for electricity, for communication. This is the first thing. Then the important civil services like hospitals, it is very important. All hospitals were destroyed. Then most important thing is schools and universities. 500 schools were destroyed,
There's
either completely
so much rebuilding, and all of this is going to be very expensive.
Yes.
Where do you draw the kitty from to rebuild economically?
There are commitments from many Arab countries and some European countries, and there is a coalition actually that has been created a few days ago, that includes 12 countries. Out of them there is Saudi Arabia, France, Spain, Norway, Denmark, I don't recall all the names, UK also, Japan as well. It is a financial coalition to support the Palestinian Authority, because now the Palestinian Authority is facing a huge financial crisis due to the Israeli, again, illegal practices. They are withholding the tax money for Palestine. We are talking about $1 billion since more than three years. So our authority is unable to pay salaries for the employees. So this financial coalition is just to support the Palestinian Authority currently. Now, for the reconstruction, there is other commitments from other countries, including Arab countries, especially from the Gulf countries, who are willing to pay. We are talking about $54 or $56 billion, which is a huge amount. But there is an international commitment to cover these expenses. I mentioned something also at the beginning, that Gaza, it has a wealth, but for the moment, it's not exploited. It will be in the future.
Right.
There is gas in Gaza. This is for Gaza. So before talking about relaunching the economy of Gaza, there's the reconstruction, and it will take time. Now, for the West Bank, you mentioned the case of Bethlehem. It's my city. It relies principally on tourism, and since 2023 and 2023 till today, tourism is null, zero in Bethlehem. So hotels are closed. We are talking about something like 40 hotels in the city. All of them are closed. Souvenir shops are closed. the manufacturers of handicrafts relating to the Nativity and to Christmas and things like that.
This would have been a great time to visit under better conditions.
So everything is halted, everything is stopped. Now, in addition, there is the restriction of movement between the Palestinian cities. As you know, we have our governance within the cities. For example, the city of Bethlehem is run and governed by the Palestinian Authority within the city. Same thing in the all other cities, Hebron, Ramallah, Jericho, Jenin, Nablus, etc. But when it comes to moving from one city to another, it is controlled by the Israelis. That's why we are under occupation. And there are 1,200 checkpoints in the West Bank. And do you see the size of the West Bank? 1,000, which means when we want to go from Bethlehem to Ramallah, we should pass through 5 or 6 checkpoints.
Okay, Ambassador Anastas, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have now for this segment. We will definitely have to have you back on. But thank you, Ambassador Munir Anastas from the State of Palestine.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure having me with you. Thank you so much.
We're going to be taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Companies are soaking up their own shares with a string of buyback programs. MegaWorld steps up its buyback program, soaking up millions of its own shares from the market. The company is spending about 7.35 million pesos to purchase 1.15 million common shares on September 29th at an average price of 2 pesos and 1 centavo each. The move reduces outstanding shares to 32.55 billion, while Treasury shares climb to over 1.19 billion. So far, MegaWorld has repurchased 3.65 million shares under its 2 billion peso buyback program launched September 24. Now, SM Prime keeps buying back its own stock, spending over 11.3 million pesos in its latest transaction. The company is purchasing 500,000 common shares from the open market on September 29th at prices ranging from 22 to 22 pesos and 60 centavos to 22 pesos and 75 centavos per share. The move reduces outstanding shares to 28.87 billion, while Treasury shares rise to about 4.29 billion. So far, SM Prime has repurchased 8.61 million shares under its 5 to 10 billion peso buyback program approved in December of 2024. The total value of shares repurchased to date stands at 191.2 million pesos. Now, SM Prime, of course, isn't alone in soaking up shares. Another property giant is also active in the market. Ayala Land is spending about 23.9 million pesos in its latest share buyback transactions. On September 29th, the company purchasing a total of 950,000 common shares at prices ranging from 25 pesos and 15 centavos to 25 pesos and 40 centavos per share. The buyback reduces outstanding shares to 14.52 billion, while Treasury shares rise to about 2.18 billion. Now, Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldi Ko resigns from Congress amid a multi-billion peso corruption scandal, citing threats to his life and family. He quits after House Speaker Boji D warns him to return from overseas to face the probe into alleged kickbacks from the flood control projects. Ko is denying any wrongdoing and claims he's being denied due process. But critics like Representative Toby Bianco say that his exit is not enough. Bianco insists that Ko should come home and answer the accusations before him, including claims that he demanded 20 to 25% cuts from massive infrastructure deals. Now, on another front, the luxury car market in the Philippines is shifting gears, and Mercedes-Benz Philippines is betting big on innovation and sustainability to stay ahead. Car sales have been unpredictable in recent years, but the brand is leveraging its best-selling model to tap the growing demand for luxury green vehicles. Our mobility correspondent, G. Baroga, spoke with the company leaders about how they're adapting to changing demands and helping shape a more sustainable future for local mobility.
Mercedes-Benz Philippines says the local car market has been erratic in recent years. According to Benjamin Bautista, its AVP for Product Planning and Training, this isn't just a premium segment issue. Even the mass market has been riding a roller coaster. It all started during the pandemic in 2020. Sales began to recover in 2024, but dipped again toward the end of the year, especially for luxury vehicles. Still, the company remains optimistic.
We're having this downtrend, but then again, really hopeful that next year will be a brighter future for all of us in the luxury segment and also the total industry mass market.
According to the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers, car sales have remained steady so far this year. That's why Inchcape Philippines, the distributor for Mercedes-Benz and other luxury brands, is focusing on delivering smarter vehicles and exceptional service to its customers. Their latest release is the plug-in hybrid version of the GLE SUV, a model they say demonstrates their continued commitment to innovation and sustainability. Maricar Parco, General Manager of Mercedes-Benz PH, says the GLE remains their best seller, accounting for over a third of their total sales in 2025. This is expected to continue with the arrival of its new version.
It's a smart, sustainable solution that meets the needs of today's modern driver without sacrificing the performance, safety, and luxury that defines Mercedes-Benz.
A recent Inchcape study shows that 7 in 10 people across the Asia-Pacific say they can't imagine life without a car. More than 8 in 10 feel good about switching to new energy vehicles. In the Philippines, 75% of respondents say owning a car has become more important in the last 2 years, many linking it to better job access and personal mobility. The country even leads the region in plans to purchase eco-friendly vehicles, with a rising number of Filipino women leading the charge. With demand for cars and EVs growing, Inchcape says its goal is to make choosing and owning a vehicle easier and more exciting for Filipino consumers. And that direction is being driven from the top.
We are in the mode of getting towards 46% emission target by 2030, and we target net zero by 2040. So our direction is to make sure that majority of executives, as far as possible, get to emission-free cars.
The GLE is the third plug-in hybrid model in Mercedes-Benz's local lineup. While many countries are accelerating their transition to electric mobility, Inchcape Philippines' country head Alex Yap notes that in the Philippines, the full shift will depend on market conditions, customer adoption, and government policies. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
The clock is ticking in Washington with a government shutdown just days away. U.S. President Donald Trump and Democratic leaders make little progress in a White House meeting meant to avert the deadlock that could disrupt services as early as Wednesday. Both sides emerge from the talks blaming each other if Congress fails to extend funding beyond Tuesday midnight. Democrats insist any deal must include the extension of expiring health benefits, while Republicans argue health care and funding should be tackled separately. Without action, thousands of federal workers from NASA to national parks could be furloughed. Federal courts may close and grants for small businesses could be delayed.
There was a frank and direct discussion with the President of the United States and Republican leaders, but significant and meaningful differences remain. Democrats are fighting to protect the health care of the American people, and we are not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans. Period. Full stop.
We just had a very frank conversation with the Senate and House Democratic leadership. Look, the principle at stake here is very simple. We have disagreements about tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about health care policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function.
Still in America, U.S. President Donald Trump threatens to slap a 100% tariff on all films produced outside the United States. The move could upend Hollywood's global business model, with many studios depending on cross-border co-productions and international box office revenues. Trump argues other countries are stealing America's movie-making business, but it remains unclear what legal authority he would use to impose the tariff. Now, video sharing firm YouTube agrees to pay $24.5 million to settle a lawsuit filed by U.S. President Donald Trump. The case stems from his suspension on social media platforms after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. This makes Alphabet-owned YouTube the last of the three big tech firms sued by Trump to reach a settlement after Meta and X, formerly Twitter. Of the total, $22 million will go to the nonprofit trust for the National Mall to preserve the landmark and help fund the White House State Ballroom. Another $2.5 million covers settlements with other plaintiffs. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.